Most don't know this about my father, but he was one of the first men in the state to win joint custody after a divorce. He went in swinging and came out with the dubious victory of taking care of me and my sister for half of his waking days. While precedent-setting, I do sometimes wonder if he ever regretted his choice. It was an exhausting one for the time. I doubt he did, though, for my dad was the type of person who committed to things despite the consequences. They chose custody dates like one would members for a dodgeball team. Saturday was especially coveted, and my dad dived with his first pick for that day. My mom countered with a Sunday. Soon the entire roster was filled. Monday at Mom's, Tuesday and Wednesday at Dad's, Thursday Mom, Saturday Dad, Sunday Mom. Oh, but Friday was special. Friday they split. Every other Friday our dad would have off work, so he'd wait for us after school. My sister was in elementary school, so she was done an hour before me. The two would wait at Mr. Frosty's. She would have rainbow sprinkles, and he a chocolate dip while they waited for 7th period to let out. I'd race out of history, usually my favorite, but far forgotten in the furor of off Fridays. Off Fridays meant trips and adventure and excitement. Off Fridays were our time with Dad. And off we would go, the Thomas Brothers map in my lap, and my sister bouncing in excitement in the back of the pickup's cab. "Let's go to the desert today," my dad might say, and my fat little 12-year-old finger would thumb through the maps to the right one, tracing out a route for us. "Highway 8, east," I'd say, and we'd be off. Pink Floyd wailing as he'd snake a route through mountain roads to go visit the apple town of Julian, or past emu farms to watch animals at dusk at the safari park, or down along the bay and beach to go rollerblading on the boardwalk at sunset. Sometimes we wouldn't go anywhere at all, and would instead head to Point Loma for a dinner at the Venetian. My sister would order cheese bread, and I'd pretend to be an adult, trying something new off the Italian restaurant's entrees section each week. Perhaps that last option was exercised too much. At the least, there's no doubt in the family history library that both myself and my sister carry the blame for our most infamous moment at that restaurant. In our defense, our trio had been going there for years. The two of us had grown comfortable. Still, we have yet to fully live down what we did. Once, long ago, the Venetian had a lovely waiting area, complete with window seats. The windows were frosted glass. This detail is important. Now, my sister and I, we weren't the worst children in the world. We weren't savages, for the most part. I often fancied myself as some grand princess in a fantasy novel. My sister was adorable and sweet, and mostly only ate cheese for the relevant years for this story. However, we were creative and creative leads to boredom at an alarming rate. We were the type of children who held photo shoots and made movies. Waiting to be seated for dinner was a hurdle on par with getting the ring to Mordor. It simply wasn't happening without some magic and Maiar intervention. Our dad went to the bathroom. In our defense, this was an amateur mistake on his part, and I would suggest my sister and I are thus, at the most, only 50% culpable for what happened next. Many a war has been lost to the bladder's calling, and this was no exception. Once again, let me set the scene. A waiting room, pleather benches stiff, stern, and cruel. Two children, hungry and bored and creative. Again, I must emphasize that we were creative children. With that forewarning, my father's trip to the bathroom becomes a starkly terrifying decision, the kind you scream at characters not to make in horror movies. He left. Free from our non-existent shackles, my sister and I gleefully revolted. At first, we just bounced on the pleather cushions. They were quite bouncy, but soon we felt the need for more. The frosted windows beckoned. I licked my finger and pressed it to the glass. A beautiful, soft remnant was left behind. The print of my touch ghosted across the glass in a vague blur. "Oh!" I murmured, delighted by this new revelation. "Look, we can leave marks." This was the beginning of the end. I began to paint, licking my finger and swooping it across the glass in wide streaks. I sketched out little clouds, a happy sun, even swaying flowers. And then I turned to my sister. 6 years younger, she had no chance. "You should lick the glass," I whispered with a giggle. She giggled back and immediately did so, leaving behind a blurry, wet blob across the frosted glass. We both found this incredibly amusing and began to pepper the plexi with pecks and slobber. This is when my dad returned. He said nothing. He never needed to. My father was a mild-mannered man, so as soon as he cleared his throat in just the right way, we both knew we had fucked up. And he cleared his throat. Shit. We smiled and fidgeted. Maybe he wouldn't notice? He said nothing. That was worse than punishment. Only on the worst offenses would he say nothing at all, letting us simmer in our own guilt. This was one of those offenses, and boy did we simmer. He let us stew for a week, an entire week, before he relented, finally taking us back to the restaurant. But we weren't coming to eat. Instead, he asked to speak to management. It was a family-owned place, so Joey, the owner's son, came out. Joey's known both of us since we're small. He grinned the moment he saw our woebegone attempts to avoid his eyes. He knew what we were there for. We had destroyed their windows. They had had to put in entirely new windows. We had messed up big time. "I think my girls have something to say," my dad said, eyebrows raising as he looked to us. We had no words, and blushes and tears were all that could be wrung out of us at first. Finally, eventually, after stern coaxing and much shame, we confessed our crime. We had destroyed the windows. We had painted them. We were the rogue kissers. Joey just grinned and winked at my dad, and then sat us at our usual booth, vanishing for a moment before returning with a beer. "Chicken parmesan?" he asked my dad, the usual order, and my father nodded, mirroring Joey's grin. Justice had been served. We learned many years later how frosted glass actually works.
I don't know how to start this story, and it has happened a few months ago, had a 10-year backstory. Back when I was 14 years old, I fell in love with one of my classmates in school. She's kinda gullible in a cute way and laughs so hard at my jokes, even at her expense. I started courting her, and she was hesitant at first given that we were very close friends, but she told me she'd give me a chance since she loves being around me. After 3 to 4 months of courting, she then said yes, and we became officially boyfriend and girlfriend. We fell in love so hard and dated until we graduated high school. After the graduation, it was summer break. She told me she needs to live with her sister in the capital city for college. I told her that it would be okay for us, and we can make a long-distance relationship work. I studied at one of the universities in our province, and she went with her sister in the city and decided to take a year off before enrolling in college. We communicated a lot for the few months of us being away. I called her for our 4th anniversary and told me that no matter what I should wait for her. But then, few months later, she suddenly disappeared. I can't call her phone, her social media accounts became inactive, and her friends got friended by her new account. I was hurt that she tried to ghost me. When I tried to reach out and was ignored, it broke me. Suddenly, she became somebody that I used to know. Yeah, love that song. One of her friends comes to the same campus that I went, and I saw her one time. I just politely said hello to her, and she asked me to go out at a cafe near our campus after classes. We met at the cafe and told me that my ex said she was sorry and gave me a letter she sent. The letter said that she can't make it work having a long-distance BF, and she just want to move on and wished me best. It freaking hurts, I thanked her friend, went to my boarding house and cried ugly, but I decided to respect her decision and moved on too. A year passed, and I met a girl in a workshop I attended. We have the same line, of course, just different school. I asked for her number to communicate with some stuff about the workshop. She was tomboyish, so at first I didn't really notice her in a romantic way. But we became friends. I end up hanging with her every night. She is taking night classes. She's a working student. As we hang out, she became more girly. Don't know the proper term. More feminine, I guess. She started wearing fit clothes, and I noticed her face is pretty when her hair is not ponytailed, and her sexy body just awed me. After almost a year, we are both 3rd year in college, I courted her, and she excitedly said yes, saying that she liked me for the longest time. She just don't want to initiate something because it was kind of frowned upon in our country. Now, we're both professionals, have a cute daughter, together for 8 years, and married for 2. Suddenly, I got a call from an unknown number. She introduced as my ex-GF, asking if we could meet. I hesitated, but agreed. In one condition, I have to bring my wife. She became furious on the phone, called me a liar and manipulator, but she still insisted in meeting me without my wife, told her I would meet her in a public place. We went to a mall and talked in a stall. I started the conversation with, "Hi, how have you been?" She told me she had a 4-year-old son, but got separated with her partner. Her partner was a seafarer and cut communication with her, and just sending her money through his mother, and told me she went back to our province for me, and when she found out I was married and had a daughter, she got shocked because I promised her that I'd wait for her. I was stunned with the audacity. As she stuttered while trying to control her crying, I stopped her and told her, gritting my teeth, "Thank you for coming back for me. But she can't just come back in my life after 10 years, after abandoning me, having a son and other relationships, and come back to me when all of it failed, expecting me to hold a 10-year-old promise that she broke first. told her to never contact me again. I stood up, thanked the staffs in the stall, eyes red from my emotions, and went to my wife and daughter on another restaurant. My wife asked me how it went, and I told her I'll tell the story when we went home because I'm furious that time. Went home, told her the story, she hugged me. I am very thankful with everything I have right now. That ex may be my first love, but my wife is my greatest. Hey, thanks for reading. The days after that meeting felt strangely heavy. Even though I had closed the chapter with my ex, her sudden reappearance stirred memories I thought I had buried years ago. I found myself replaying old moments in my head, her laugh, the way she used to hold my hand, the promises we made when we were young and naive. But every time those memories surfaced, I reminded myself of the reality. She chose to leave and I chose to build a new life. My wife noticed the weight I carried. One evening after putting our daughter to bed, she sat beside me on the couch and said, "You don't have to carry this alone. She's part of your past, but I'm your present and future." Her words grounded me. I realized that the anger I felt wasn't just about my ex showing up. It was about the fear that old wounds could reopen. But my wife's embrace reminded me that I had already healed, and that healing had led me to her. A week later, I received another message from an unknown number. This time, I didn't even open it. I deleted it immediately. I understood that closure doesn't always come from the other person. It comes from within. By refusing to engage, I was protecting my peace, my family, and the life I had fought to build. Instead of dwelling on the past, I poured my energy into the present. My daughter had just started preschool, and every morning when she ran to me with her tiny backpack, I felt a joy that no old memory could ever replace. My wife and I began planning a short family trip, something simple but meaningful, a chance to celebrate the life we had created together. One night, as I tucked my daughter into bed, she asked me, "Daddy, are you happy?" I smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "More than I ever thought I could be." And I meant it. The truth is, first loves are powerful. They shape us, they teach us, and sometimes they break us, but they don't define us forever. My ex may have been my first love, but she was also my first heartbreak. My wife, on the other hand, is my greatest love, the one who stood by me, built a life with me, and gave me the gift of family. From that point on, I stopped thinking of my ex as someone who had returned. To me, she was simply a reminder of how far I had come. And every time I looked at my wife and daughter, I knew I had chosen the right path.
For context, I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy. I work long shifts, so I'm usually gone from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. For months, I've had this weird feeling that someone else has been inside my place. Nothing dramatic, just small changes. Stuff like my kitchen sponge being wet even when I haven't used it. The shower floor slightly damp when I always shower at night. My cereal box moved a little to the left. The toilet seat being up even though I live alone and don't leave it like that. Tiny things, easy to shrug off. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. Then, last month something happened that I couldn't just explain away. I came home early with a migraine, like 1 p.m. early, and when I walked into my bedroom, my closet door was open, wide open. I never leave it that way. I actually have this weird habit of double-checking it before leaving. I completely froze. I checked the whole apartment, every corner, behind every door. Nothing. No one. But the feeling wouldn't leave. So I bought a small, cheap, motion-activated camera on Amazon and hid it inside a fake plant on top of my fridge. It points toward the kitchen and hallway, basically the main path someone would take to get in or out. I put my phone on silent and went to work like normal. The next day, around 2 p.m., I got a notification on my phone. Motion detected. My heart dropped so fast I couldn't breathe. I ducked into a bathroom stall at work and opened the footage. At first it looked normal. Then a hallway shadow moved. Then, from the left side of the frame, someone stepped into view. A man, wearing a hoodie, calm as if he lived there. He walked straight to my fridge, opened it, took out my orange juice, sniffed it, made a face, and put it back. Then he opened my cutlery drawer, took out a fork, looked at it like he was judging me, and put it back in a different spot. He didn't steal anything. He didn't rush. He didn't seem nervous. He was too comfortable. The worst part, he walked down the hallway and went directly to my bedroom. And I never got footage of him coming back out. The camera only covered the kitchen. I left work immediately and called my best friend on the way. I was shaking so badly, I almost dropped my keys. When I got home, everything was perfectly normal. No sign of anything disturbed. Except the fork drawer. That one detail made it real. I took the video to my landlord. He watched it 3 times, pale, and said, "I know who that is." He wouldn't explain further, only that it's being handled. I demanded he change my locks immediately. He did it within an hour, which makes me think he already knew there was a problem. Here's the part that still kills me. That night, around 11 p.m., I heard footsteps above my bedroom. There is no apartment above mine, only a locked storage attic that only the landlord has the key to. I asked him again the next day. He said I must have imagined it and refused to talk about it again. I bought a second camera and a third. Since the locks were changed, nothing has happened. But sometimes I come home and I swear I can smell someone else's cologne in my hallway. I don't know what scares me more, that someone was living in my apartment, or that the landlord knew about it. I thought the new locks and extra cameras would finally give me peace. For a few days, they did. I came home, checked the footage, saw nothing unusual. But the smell of cologne lingered, faint but undeniable, like someone had brushed past my door minutes before I arrived. It was the kind of scent that clings to fabric, heavy and old-fashioned, the kind worn by men who want to be noticed. Every time I inhaled it, my stomach twisted. I started timing my arrivals differently. One day I came home at noon, another at midnight, another at dawn. Each time, the hallway smelled faintly of that same cologne. It didn't matter when I came back. Someone had been there. One night, I decided to stay awake. I sat in the living room with the lights off, baseball bat across my lap, cameras armed. At 2:17 a.m., I heard it. Footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth in the attic. My heart hammered so loudly, I thought whoever was up there could hear it. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera feeds. Nothing. The attic wasn't covered. I climbed onto a chair, pressed my ear to the ceiling. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, faintly, a whisper. "You shouldn't be here!" I nearly dropped the phone. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, male, and close. I scrambled down, locked myself in the bathroom, and sat shaking until dawn. The next morning, I checked the attic hatch. Dust lined the edges, but there were fresh scuff marks on the wood, as if someone had been opening it regularly. I borrowed a ladder again, climbed up, and pushed the hatch open. The attic was nearly empty now. The mattress was gone, the magazines gone, the toothbrush gone. Only a faint outline in the dust showed where they had been. But in the corner, tucked behind a box, I found something new. A notebook. It was small, leather-bound, worn at the edges. I opened it carefully. Inside were pages of cramped handwriting, notes about me, my schedule, what time I left for work, what time I came home, how long I showered, what I ate for breakfast. Every detail of my life recorded in neat, obsessive lines. I, 25M, grew up in a pretty tight-knit family. I have a brother, 24M, and sister, 22F, and was very close to my parents, 52M, 50F, spending every holiday there most weekends during college. We grew up on the suburbs of Minneapolis and all went to the University of Minnesota. A year ago, if you would have told me where I would be at today, I would have laughed at your pessimism. But here we are. I met Stacy, 24F, during my sophomore year of college, and we dated until I proposed last December. She said yes, and we were planning on getting married next summer and spending our lives in Minnesota. But in April, my life fell apart. I came home early to find my brother in bed with my fiancé. I freaked out and left and kicked her out of our shared apartment. Days later, she came back and said she had fallen in love with my brother over the years and that she was sorry but was where her heart was. She moved out, and I blocked her and my brother. Initially, the rest of my family took my side and banned my brother from family events. I slowly began to heal. I had a work opportunity come up. My boss pulled me in and said that he had suggested I lead the office in Chicago. They're kind of a mess, and the company wanted someone from headquarters to take over. I couldn't believe it, but I said yes. I never thought I'd leave Minnesota, but thought it was time for a change. This all happened in early November, and the plan was to move after Christmas. My plan was to tell the family at Thanksgiving and then spend Christmas one last time before moving. But of course, my ex and brother had to stick the knife in one last time before they left. When I showed up for Thanksgiving at my parents' house, there were several cars as the whole extended family comes over, so I didn't even notice my brother's car. I entered the house, and the first thing I see is my ex and brother talking with my aunt. I freeze as my aunt calls for my mom to come in. My brother and ex won't look me in the eye. My mom and dad come in, greet me, and ask me to sit down in the living room. I sit away from my brother and ex, but I see the rest of the family, including my sister, sits closer to them. My mom starts explaining that what they did was wrong and terrible, but that she hates that the family is split. She says I need to work toward forgiveness. My ex and brother both started to apologize, but I put my hand up. I turned to my sister and asked her if she agreed. She had tears in her eyes but nodded. Asked my dad the same question, he said yes, pretty firmly. I was alone. I got up and walked out. I heard a couple people yelling after me, but I didn't respond. I drove to a McDonald's, ate a pretty shitty Thanksgiving meal, and went through my options and decided cutting them off was my best bet. I had saved plenty. I didn't need them, and they didn't know where I was moving. I blocked them all on my phone, but it was my parents' plan that I was on, so I turned the phone in the next week and got on my own plan. Doubled my cell bill, but it was worth it to get a new number. I blocked them on social media, and I told my boss that I wanted to move to Chicago early. Talked to the landlord of the apartment I was looking to rent, and he was happy to let me in early. I moved to Chicago on December 15th, and my family had no idea. A few friends knew, and it must have slipped, because last night I got an Instagram DM from what I assume is my mom on a new profile, asking why I would move without telling them, and that the family missed and loved me, and that I needed to still make time for Christmas. I responded by saying that she only had one son now, and that I was no longer family. I then blocked her new account and locked down my profile and other social media. I've been looking to change my last name as well. I've left that life behind, and I'm excited to see what Chicago has to offer. Since moving to Chicago, things have been quiet. Not peaceful, not chaotic, just quiet. I wake up in a new apartment where no one knows my name, where no one has expectations of me, where I'm not someone's son, brother, or ex-fiancé. I'm just me. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. The first few days were surreal. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. Every item I placed felt like a declaration. This is mine. This is my space. This is my life now. I bought new sheets, new dishes, even a new toothbrush. I didn't want anything that reminded me of the life I left behind. I didn't want echoes of Stacy's laugh in the kitchen or my brother's voice in the hallway. I wanted silence, and I got it. Work became my anchor. The Chicago office was, as my boss warned, a mess. Disorganized, understaffed, morale in the gutter. But I threw myself into it. I arrived early, stayed late, and slowly started rebuilding the team. I wasn't just managing spreadsheets and meetings. I was rebuilding something, and that gave me purpose. It was the one place where I felt in control. But healing isn't linear. Some nights, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how it all went so wrong. I'd replay that moment, walking into my parents' house, seeing Stacy and my brother chatting like they belonged there. The way my mom asked me to sit down, the way my sister nodded through tears, the way my dad said, yes, like it was a fact, not a betrayal. I'd think about the McDonald's meal, the taste of cold fries and regret, and I'd feel that familiar ache in my chest. I started journaling, not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I needed somewhere to put the thoughts that wouldn't leave me alone. I wrote about the betrayal, about the silence, about the way my family chose unity over justice. I wrote about how forgiveness felt like a demand, not a choice. And I wrote about Chicago, about the way the city lights reflected off the river, about the strangers who smiled at me on the train, about the way the wind cut through my coat and reminded me I was still alive. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. A minute later, a voicemail came through. It was my sister. Her voice was shaky, like she wasn't sure she should be calling. She said she missed me, said she didn't know how to handle Thanksgiving, said she felt torn. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I wasn't ready. A week later, another message came, this time from my dad. He said he understood why I left. Said he didn't expect forgiveness, just hoped I was okay. That one hit harder. My dad isn't the emotional type. Hearing him say that made me realize how deep the fracture had gone. But again, I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to punish them. I just needed space. Real space. Not the kind where you mute someone's texts and still check their Instagram. I needed to disappear from their world so I could figure out who I was without them. I started going to a local coffee shop every Sunday. Same table, same order. The barista, a guy named Marcus, started remembering my name. We'd chat about books, movies, the weather. It was simple, human, and it reminded me that connection didn't have to be complicated. I wasn't looking for new family. I was just looking for moments that felt real. One day, Marcus asked if I wanted to join a book club he was part of. I hesitated. I hadn't been social in months, but I said yes. The first meeting was awkward. I didn't know anyone, and I wasn't sure how much of myself I wanted to share. But as the weeks went on, I found myself opening up. Not about the betrayal, not yet, but about the books, the city, the things I was learning about myself. I realized I had spent so much of my life being the good son, the responsible one, the stable partner, and when that identity shattered, I didn't know who I was. Chicago gave me the chance to rebuild, not just my career, but my sense of self. I started therapy. I found a counselor who specialized in family trauma and betrayal. The first few sessions were rough. I cried more than I talked, but slowly I began to unpack the layers. The guilt, the anger, the grief. I talked about Stacy, about my brother, about the way my family wanted me to move on, without ever acknowledging the depth of the wound. I talked about how lonely it felt to be the only one who refused to pretend. And I talked about the name change. It wasn't just symbolic, it was a way to reclaim my identity. I didn't want to carry a name that tied me to people who chose convenience over loyalty. I wanted a fresh start, down to the signature on my lease. By spring, things started to shift. The weather warmed, the city came alive, and I felt lighter. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was no longer drowning. I was swimming, sometimes against the current, but moving forward nonetheless. I still haven't spoken to my family. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe someday, when the pain feels distant and the anger has faded. But for now, I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing peace over obligation. I'm choosing truth over appearances. And Chicago? It's not just a city, it's a symbol of survival, of reinvention, of the fact that even when everything falls apart, you can still build something new.